Hey everyone, welcome back to Ton Does Linux. It's been another eventful week in the Linux world, and today we're covering everything that happened from November 11th through the 17th, 2025. We've got some interesting developments this week. Red Hat just dropped RHEL 10.1 with offline AI capabilities. Valve surprised everyone with a new Steam Machine announcement, and we've got fresh releases from Debian, KDE, and a whole lot more. So let's dive right in, starting with what I think is one of the more significant releases this week. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10.1 and 9.7 all launched on November 12th. Now, you might be thinking, okay, another point release. What's new? But this one's actually pretty interesting, primarily if you work in environments with strict security requirements. The headline feature here is the offline RHEL command line assistant, which is now in developer preview. This is an AI-powered tool that can help you with Linux tasks, troubleshooting, installation questions, all the usual stuff you'd expect from an AI assistant. But here's the key difference. It runs completely offline. No cloud connectivity required. No data leaves your network. For those of you working in finance, government, defense, or any air-gapped environment, this is actually a pretty big deal. You get AI-powered guidance without compromising your security posture. Now, you do need a Red Hat satellite subscription to access this, so it's not for everyone, but for enterprise users, this could be genuinely useful. They also expanded the command line assistant's context limit from 2 kilobytes to 32 kilobytes. That might not sound like much, but it means you can now pipe larger long files into it, handle more complex queries, and get more detailed responses. It's one of those quality of life improvements that make the tool significantly more practical. Well, another thing worth mentioning, RHEL 10.1 now includes vendor-validated AI accelerator drivers in their extensions and supplementary repositories. We're talking NVIDIA OpenRM drivers and the CUDA toolkit, AMD's AMD GPU driver with ROCm, and Intel's NPU kernel mode driver. If you're running AI workloads on RHEL, this makes it much easier to keep your GPU and accelerator drivers up to date, without hunting down packages from various sources. Now, speaking of AI and Linux, there's been an ongoing discussion about AI-generated code submissions to the Linux kernel. On November 15th, Intel engineer Dave Hansen posted the third draft of proposed guidelines for tool-generated contributions. The key point here is transparency. If you're using AI or coding assistants to write kernel code, you need to disclose it. If AI helped you detect a bug or test something, you need to mention that too. The guidelines renamed references from LLM to coding assistant and added some clarifications around testing. It's still a proposal, not a final policy. Still, it shows the kernel community is taking this seriously and trying to establish clear rules before AI-generated contributions become more common. Alright, let's talk about distribution releases. We had quite a few this week, so I'll try to keep this moving. First up, Debian 13.2 dropped on November 15th. This is the second point release for Debian 13 Trixie. Now, point releases aren't usually exciting. They're mostly security fixes and stability updates. But if you're running Debian, you'll want to run apt update and apt upgrade to pull in all the latest patches. Nothing groundbreaking here, but it's good housekeeping. NX Linux 25, codenamed Infinity, was released on November 13th. This is actually a pretty significant update because it's now based on Debian 13 Trixie, which means you're getting all the updated software and libraries from that base. You've got updated desktop environments, XFCE 4.20, KDE Plasma 6.3.6, and Fluxbox 1.3. They also introduced a brand new MX Updater tool that replaces the old app notifier. They redesigned the installer with a new Replace Partition option that should make installations a bit smoother. One nice touch, they added new Conky configurations that let you switch between 12-hour and 24-hour time formats based on your locale. Small detail, but it shows attention to user experience. If you're a fan of mid-weight distributions that work out of the box, MX Linux continues to be a solid choice. Nitrux 5.0 launched with Hyprland as the default desktop environment. For those not familiar, Hyprland is a dynamic tiling Wayland compositor. It's modern, it's fast, and it's very keyboard-driven. Nitrux has always been a bit more experimental and cutting-edge, so seeing them adopt Hyprland makes sense. If you like tiling window managers and want something that looks gorgeous while being highly efficient, Nitrux might be worth checking out. Tails 7.2 came out with Tor Browser 15.0 and Linux kernel 6.12 LTS. For those who don't know, Tails is a privacy-focused live operating system. Every update matters here because security and anonymity are the whole point. The move to kernel 6.12 LTS means better hardware support and long-term stability. Sparky Linux 8.1 rolled out with Plasma 6.3.6, LXQ 2.1, and XFCE 4.20. Sparky is a Debian-based distro that offers multiple desktop flavors, and this update brings all of them to their latest stable versions. It's a nice option if you want Debian stability, but with more recent desktop environments. And finally, DietPi 9.19 introduced BirdNet Go and expanded Debian Trixie support. DietPi is optimized for single-board computers like Raspberry Pi, and BirdNet Go is a tool for real-time bird sound recognition. Yeah, you read that right. You can now turn your Raspberry Pi into a bird identification station. It's one of those niche features that shows how diverse the Linux ecosystem really is. So, that's the distribution roundup. Lots of solid updates across the board. Nothing revolutionary, but steady progress. Let's move on to desktop environments and applications. This is where we saw the most activity this week. KDE had a busy week. We got KDE Plasma 6.4.6, Plasma Mobile 6.5, and KDE Framework 6.20, all released within days of each other. Plasma 6.4.6 is a maintenance release. On fixes, performance improvements, the usual polish. Nothing flashy, but these incremental updates are what keep the desktop stable and smooth. Plasma Mobile 6.5 is more interesting. They improved the lock screen speed, a common complaint, and added better Waydroid integration. For those not familiar, Waydroid lets you run Android apps on Linux. Better integration here means you can use Android apps more seamlessly on a Linux phone, which is excellent for anyone experimenting with devices like the PinePhone. KDE Framework 6.20 is the underlying library collection that powers KDE applications. This release includes API improvements, better performance, and new developer features. If you're a KDE app developer, this gives you more tools to work with. Oh, and there's news that KDE Plasma 6.6 will bring OCR functionality to the Spectacle Screenshot utility. That means you'll be able to take a screenshot of text and have it automatically extracted as selectable text. Really handy for grabbing text from images or PDFs. Firefox 145 is now available for download. Mozilla continues to push out updates every few weeks, and this one includes the usual mix of security fixes, performance improvements, and some under-the-hood changes. If you're a Firefox user, you've probably already got it, or it's waiting in your update queue. Thunderbird 145 launched with Microsoft Exchange support. This is actually a pretty big deal for Thunderbird. Exchange support has been a long-requested feature, and now you can connect to Exchange servers natively without needing third-party plugins or workarounds. If you're in a workplace that uses Exchange, but you prefer Thunderbird over Outlook, this update is for you. LibreOffice 25.8.3 included 70 bug fixes across Writer, Calc, and Impress. These maintenance releases might not be exciting, but they're essential for keeping the Office suite stable and reliable. If you use LibreOffice daily, these fixes add up to a better experience. Vivaldi Browser 7.7 arrived with a unified start page and smarter tab syncing. Vivaldi is one of those browsers packed with features for power users. Tab stacking, built-in notes, and a customizable UI. If you haven't tried it, it's worth a look, especially if you find Chrome or Firefox too basic. Wine 10.19 was released with reparse point support. For those who don't know, Wine lets you run Windows applications on Linux. Reparse points are a Windows file system feature used for features such as symbolic links and mount points. Better support here means more Windows applications will work correctly under Wine. Fish Shell 4.2 introduced improved auto-suggestions. Fish is a user-friendly command line shell that's known for its smart auto-completion and syntax highlighting. If you're tired of Bash and want something more modern, Fish is a great alternative. Quick mentions for a few more updates. RSPAMD 3.14 added dark mode and a postfix wizard. FastFetch 2.55 introduced dynamic refresh and media cover logos. GStreamer 1.26.8 fixed HDR color issues. Rust Core Utils 0.4 boosted GNU compatibility to 85%, and GNU Core Utils 9.9 included stability fixes. There's also Miracle WN 0.8 with accessibility features. Trafic Proxy 3.6 with multi-layer routing, and NetBeans 28 with Gradle and Maven enhancements. Lots of small but meaningful updates across the ecosystem. Alright, now let's talk about the stuff that got a lot of people excited this week. Gaming and containers. On November 12th, Valve announced not one, not two, but 3 new hardware products. The Steam Machine, the Steam Controller 2, and the Steam Frame VR headset. All 3 are scheduled to launch in early 2026. The Steam Machine is being positioned as a living room console, but it's really a PC. Valve says it's over 6 times more potent than the Steam Deck, which is impressive. It's a small form factor device designed to sit in your entertainment center and run SteamOS. Think of it as a gaming PC that's as easy to use as a console. The Steam Controller 2 is the successor to the original Steam controller from way back in 2015. This new version has gyro controls, over 35 hours of battery life, and it's designed to work seamlessly with the Steam Machine and Steam Deck. The original Steam controller had a cult following, so there's definitely demand for this. And the Steam Frame is Valve's new VR headset with controllers. We don't have a ton of details yet, but Valve's previous VR efforts with the Index were well received, so expectations are high. What's interesting here is that all 3 devices will run SteamOS, which is based on Arch Linux. This is a big vote of confidence for Linux gaming. Valve is betting that SteamOS and Proton are mature enough to power an entire hardware ecosystem. Speaking of Proton, Proton 10.0-3 was released on November 14th. This is the latest stable version of Valve's compatibility layer that lets you run Windows aims on Linux. This update brings support for a bunch of new games: Mary Skelter Nightmares, Fairy Fencer F, Advent Dark Force, Far Horizon, The Riftbreaker, and more. It also includes dozens of game-specific fixes and improvements. One notable fix is improved AV Pro player compatibility in VR chat. They fixed video distortion, syncing issues, and overall performance. VR chat is one of the most popular social VR platforms, and better Linux support here is excellent news for the community. The fact that Proton keeps getting better and that Valve is doubling down on Linux with new hardware really shows how far Linux gaming has come. We're at a point where thousands of Windows games run on Linux, often with better performance than on Windows. Now let's talk containers. Docker Engine 29 was released with Containerd as the default runtime and experimental NFTable support. Containerd has been the industry standard for a while, so making it the default is a logical move. The NFTable support is still experimental, but it's a step toward modernizing Docker's networking stack. Docker Desktop 4.50 launched with a free debugger and deep IDE integration. The debugger is a big deal for developers. You can now step through your containerized applications without needing third-party tools. The IDE integration makes it easier to work with Docker directly from Visual Studio Code and other editors. Podman 5.7 added full TLS and MTLS encryption for remote connections. Podman is a daemonless alternative to Docker and is popular in enterprise environments. Better encryption support makes it more suitable for production use cases where security is critical. Canonical announced that Ubuntu Pro coverage is expanding to 15 years of LTS support. That's a significant commitment. For enterprises running Ubuntu in production, this means you can deploy a system today and get security updates and support until 2040. That's longer than most hardware life cycles. KeePassXC, the popular password manager, clarified its AI policy this week. They stated that AI is used only in development workflows, not in the application itself. This is in response to growing concerns about AI being embedded in software without user consent. It's good to see projects being transparent about this. openSUSE Tumbleweed now ships with Grub2 BLS by default for new installs. BLS stands for Bootloader Specification, and it's a standardized way of managing boot entries. This makes it easier to manage multiple kernels and boot configurations. If you're an openSUSE user, this is a quality of life improvement. And finally, Mesa 25.3 was released on November 14th. This is the quarterly feature release for open source graphics drivers. It includes Vulkan and OpenGL enhancements for AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA GPUs, explicit sync support, HDR color fixes, and improved AV1 handling. If you're gaming or doing graphics work on Linux, Mesa updates are always worth paying attention to. Alright, that's everything from November 11th through the 17th. It's been a packed week. AI features in RHEL, Valve's hardware announcements, fresh distribution releases, desktop environment updates, and much more. If you found this useful, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I regularly do these Linux news roundups, so you'll stay up to date on everything happening in the open source world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.